Hey, what's up, y'all? This is JCJ, and I want to welcome you to another episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. So today I'm going to be talking about an issue that's a very relevant issue, especially within the Black community in America, and certain things that we need to improve on, or at least acknowledge exist. Now, before I go further, I want to kind of give you guys some credentials so you have an understanding of where I'm coming from. My name is JCJ. I'm a world-class traveler. Love being international, love living overseas as well. I lived in Guyana before, and I'm about to live in Africa to complete a contract out there for my business. With all of that said, I want to talk to you today about some of the problems within the Pan-African community. Now, before I get into that, I want to say first, I'm a big supporter of, Walter Maya. I do believe that Africa could be the key if used instrumentally in a way where Blacks in the diaspora are allowed to benefit as well, and then truly become Africans in the sense of citizenship, ownership, and not treated as the Mzungus and so forth. So there's a big argument for that, and as far as the problems within the Pan-African community. If you look at the YouTube Pan-African community, you'll see people that are viciously supporting an agenda just to move to Africa with not necessarily any tangibles involved. And I think if we're going to start, number one, that's where one of the big issues is. A lot of the supporters for the Pan-African community that are unapologetic and so forth, they don't look at certain things that need to be developed in Africa. And as someone who's actually traveled to 5 African countries, I've been to Ghana. I've done my DNA test. I know that my family lineage comes actually from Ghana, actually from Mali, and then down to Ghana and so forth on my maternal and paternal side. And for the last 400 years, my family has been based in Guyana, South American country, and I'm the first generation of Black American. So that's important to note as far as me looking at things from a different perspective compared to other people. And as someone who's traveled to 5 African countries, Ghana, as I mentioned before, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, stopped over in Ethiopia, I have a good understanding of what's going on the continent. And obviously, I know what's going on here in America as far as being a resident and being born and raised here, especially within the Black community. So there's a few things that are going on right now within the Pan-African community that are causing a lot of division. The way that a lot of people are looking for tangibles, also the way that some people want to relocate, but they're mostly based off of emotion instead of logic. Now, I'm coming from a rational, logical perspective. I'm not coming from an emotional perspective. If you get your DNA test results and you want to go back to where it says, you're welcome to do that. I know the DNA test is someone who's done tests with 2 places is not 100% guaranteed. And also, there's been such dynamic and different things over the past few hundred years. Black Americans and Caribbean Americans and Caribbeans overall have become a different people from Africans overall. However, I do acknowledge that Africa is still the motherland and that we should still work together. And I still do consider myself a Pan-African. However, I see major complications in the Pan-African community that I really want to address. And the first thing that I want to address, I talked about some of the YouTubers that are Pan-African, is the condescending attitude that I see toward people that just want to bring new views and new perspectives and come from a different viewpoint. There's a condescending attitude that seems to run very rampant in the YouTube Pan-African community. And even other people, I've met people from Cobra, people that are a lot older than me that don't have a solid foundation of history, and those who do know a lot more than me who actually have never even been to Africa. Yes, it's true. There's a lot of folks who, claim they're Pan-African but have never even traveled there. So the condescending attitude that I see is, toward people that are coming with a different train of thought and not really respecting their opinion or their perspectives of where they could come from. So for example, when I went to Africa and the different countries that I named, I've noticed that Pan-African ideology is mainly an American thing, mainly a Black American thing, and Black British thing, where it's mainly popular. Obviously, it's all over the world with Blacks in the diaspora, but those are the two locations where you get a lot of Pan-Africans that tend to promote a certain type of ideology where it's all or nothing. You cannot question going back to Africa, especially even when there's no tangibles involved. And you cannot even pressure, people who actually live in Africa to, promote, Black Americans and Black British folks becoming citizens or gaining lineage to certain countries that they're interested in relocating to Africa. If you do things like that, the first thing they'll tell you is, hey, well, they don't have as much knowledge, or they don't have access to certain information, or they're so poor that they're not able to think about the issue of helping other Black people in the diaspora, and people in the diaspora are doing much better than people generally there. Now, someone who's traveled to Africa, who was engaged to an African, who dates African women, who is probably going to marry an African woman, I can tell you that that's not a fair analysis. We're in the information age, we're in the Google age, and a lot of Africans could actually look up the history of the transatlantic slave trade to get a better perspective of what's going on outside, and also why it's so important for us all to unite. At the end of the day, that's what I want to make clear with this whole message too. I don't want to also be seen as someone that's trying to break apart Africa, because there are some people, and I respect where they're coming from, but I also have my own personal experience where I'm coming from. There are some people who believe that we're such a different, complete person that Africa is not the answer because Africa cannot even solve their own issues. I'm not coming from that perspective. I do believe at the end of the day, we have to make Africa stronger. Just like some Indian Americans that still utilize their country or their continent as a home base. Just like some Chinese that wherever they go, at the end of the day, they're still Chinese. And they have a foundation of power because they make sure that they invest into where they're from. I do believe as Blacks in the diaspora, we still have to continue to do that. However, we cannot approach it in an emotional manner, and we have to be more rational and logical about it. So for example, I'm moving to Africa, as I mentioned. However, I'm not going to Ghana, where I would have to do $500,000 to get a business. I'm going to Kenya. I'm going to Rwanda, where I can do business there without a $100,000 deposit, because I looked into it and I found out that there's loopholes. And if you have a national that can run the company, you still can be a complete shareholder and still have access to doing business there, similar to how some of the Indians and Chinese do when they're there. Very important. I'm approaching it from a business perspective and not an emotional perspective. And I believe that's something that we all have to look at and explore when we're looking into something. Whether it's Black Americans that have joined the military, gained certain skills, whether it's Black professionals that have gained certain skills, being able to utilize those skills and make a business from it. Be able to create something tangible that we can share with the world. The number two issue that I see in the Pan-African community is monopolizing over what's real Black people. So a lot of Pan-Africans tend to target the ADOS community, American descendants of slaves, and they try to distance themselves from the movement and say all Black people deserve to be compensated or all Black people deserve reparations, when it is a specific lineage political argument. It is not an FBA argument where you're just looking at it from a cultural perspective. Because if you do something like that, you're not doing anything different than what's been done before. And Cobra has been stale for the past 2 decades, and they haven't done anything. But I see a legitimate argument from the ADOS, and I want to make it clear, I am not ADOS. I have nothing to benefit from them. However, being that I grew up with them in Brooklyn, I understand where they're coming from, and I understand how they can feel a certain type of way, especially looking at lineage that they deserve reparations specifically. So my family lineage, Guyana, for the past 300 to 400 years, we deserve reparations from Great Britain, not America. And so it's a completely different argument. And so with that being the case, I think that people should look at the ADOS as having a specific argument that's valid and also being able to understand where they're coming from. Now, I don't agree with everything that they put out there because I do believe that Africa is the end game. However, I do think that we should come together and try to support different things. And this is why we have so much division, because there's people who say that at the end of the day, they're all for all Black people coming together. But just because there's so many differences, people would try to attack each other. You saw how quick it was with the FBA and ADOS. People say, oh, the ADOS is running out of steam. They're running out of steam because they got into conflict with the FBA. And before the FBA was even developed, Tariq Nasheed was supporting them. And so you see how they started to gain momentum once they gained support. However, once there became a division, then people started to attack each other and things started to happen. So I want to say something. I'm on a personal journey right now. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing business in Africa, and it's not an emotional thing. But every day, I try to learn more and try to be a better person, to learn as much as I can to be a better person. I'm still on that journey, still in my 30s, and still trying to learn. I've done a lot in my life. However, I don't know everything, and I'll never claim to know everything. That being the case, there's a lot more people than me that know a lot of history, and I want to learn. I want us to come together, though, on a note of where we acknowledge the flaws within the Pan-African ideology. And it's very important to note other people's struggle and where they may be coming from. Number 3 is the aggressive behavior toward Black Americans. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, a lot of Pan-Africans that are Black Americans, they would be so quick to talk down on their own Black Americans and the mentality where things are coming from. Everything else, they'll be so quick to acknowledge it's the white man this, the white man why Africa has been plundered, and colonialism, and they'll acknowledge the effects of colonialism and why Africans may not be so receptive to being Pan-Africans themselves. This is not the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s anymore. In modern day Africa, if you go to most countries, most people there are not Pan-African. Facts. If you are in America, you would approach and meet more people who are Pan-African and understand the value of living in Africa and of all Blacks coming together. There's an aggressive behavior, especially from some of the YouTubers that are Pan-African, where they tend to talk down on like Black Americans and Black culture, Black American culture. And let's not make any mistake of it. There is something called Black American culture. And I'm not just talking about hip hop, but just even the food, if you look at it. If you look at the food, if you look at the inventions that were made, right? If you look at some of the people that have influenced some of the people or even over in Africa, Black Americans have a culture and they deserve to be respected for their culture. And it's something that a lot of Pan-Africans, especially who are Black Americans themselves, love to talk about Black American attitudes. And what they don't acknowledge is when they go over there to Africa, and this is something I've experienced wholeheartedly and so forth, there's a lot of Africans that could give two-ish if you're Black. You're not their brother because everyone else is Black. So you have to keep certain things in mind and in perspective and not have an aggressive, condescending tone toward your own and just try to come together with love. And I see that that's something that's not being done a lot. It's really done in negativity and being quick to put each other down. So another thing that I wanted to talk about problems within the Pan-African community is there's a lot of what I call broke no-teps. And growing up in New York City, I saw them all the time. People who wear the kente cloth, they have no idea of the Asante's, history and slavery. People who preach going back to Africa, but they've never actually been there. They've never actually traveled to Africa, and they have no idea of what it's like to actually live there and kind of encounter some of the feelings that the people see themselves. So I'll give you guys a quick example. Some of my friends in Kenya and Uganda told me even about how, like, due to the curfew, some of them would get whipped and so forth. They know of people that have gotten whipped who didn't follow the curfew. Police brutality happens everywhere. And in some cases, it could even be worse in a place where you have no resources, no money. And when you try to file a report, certain things just gets dismissed, especially if the person you're filing the report against has certain power. This happens in a lot of African countries, and I've seen it firsthand from one of my friends that went through a certain situation, right? They weren't able to contact certain people in power because the person knew someone in the government that had a lot of power, and the case got dismissed. So police brutality happens everywhere. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying that it's something that you should accept. You should always fight for a better tomorrow. However, I think it is disingenuous when you just look at Africa as a utopia. And that's the problem within the Pan-African community. Looking at Africa as a utopia and not acknowledging all the challenges and the problems that exist there. Okay? I'm going to keep going, you guys. I got stuff for days, man. I've been to 5 African countries. I'm moving there. I have a lot of knowledge that I want to share. Another thing is within the Pan-African community is I talked about the utopia argument. There's also a lot of separatism and tribalism there. So I'll give you guys an example. I have friends that are Nigerian, and in the north, I believe that's where it's more Islam, and different tribes from the south where it's more Christian religion. But anyway, they talk about each other and almost as dogs in some ways. And this is some things that I've seen when I was in Ghana, myself, from Nigerians that were in Ghana talking about their own. And even in Ghana, I saw folks talking about each other from the north and then Accra and so forth. So they were still talking about each other, different tribes. And in Uganda, I believe there's over 50 tribes or 50 tribes. And in Kenya, 42, around 42. With that said, tribalism and separatism absolutely exists in Africa. So if there is tension and division amongst their own, what makes you think that if you go over there as a Black American, they're not going to even see you in some cases as a Mzungu? When I refused to buy fish from someone, they called me a dirty Mzungu. Yes, I didn't spaz out on them even though I could have. But my point is, from life experiences, just because you're Black American and you feel a certain type of relation to them and so forth, it doesn't mean that they automatically assume you as an African. I personally do see myself as an African American. However, a lot of people there, tribalism rules, and that's an issue that we really, really have to address. Some of the responses for some of my friends were like, well, at least we have a culture, we have tribalism and it's been there for hundreds of years, and it kind of dictates certain things, and it's who we are. It's a part of who we are, and it gives us a sense of pride that a lot of Blacks in the diaspora do not have, especially Black Americans. However, when I see the tribalism, I see a lot of petty infighting. I see a lot of economic opportunities to come together being divided. I see a lot of situations where the Mzungu could come and play and split people up and do as they please. And so with all of that said, I think it's important to note that, people like, oh, yeah, Pan-African, you go to Africa and you'll love it. And trust me, you will love it. I only get love when I'm there. However, I'm speaking from a place of when people speak to me freely, they talk down on other tribes. I'm not saying all Africans, I'm saying some. And I'm saying that you can't go there expecting that everyone is going to see you as Black just because you look at them as Black and as one. They're not going to necessarily feel the same way. So with that said, that means that a lot of business opportunities, that means that a lot of situations that you can benefit from, they won't necessarily look at it as something that they want to come together if they could have a better opportunity with an Indian or Chinese. Keep that in mind, right? So this is problems within the Pan-African community, that we don't look at the effects of tribalism and how it really rips Africa apart. And it makes it harder for you as a Black in the diaspora to come there and succeed and to really be a part of the culture. Okay, I'm going to get into something else that I think is very important, and it's the fact that there's no end game. Now, I'm not a fan of Cobra. I looked at their, fake website and different things that they've had in the past. And as someone from the millennial generation, I don't see them as being effective in reaching out to us. I see ADOS being able to do that. There was a real long, hard movement with that, and they have a legitimate argument. I do think that some Africans, Pan-Africans rather, are very legitimate and also truly care about the people. And a few of the people that I've seen like that is the brother, I don't remember his name right now, but from Congo, and then another brother from Ghana who's a professor who really seems deeply invested in making sure that, it's truly a Pan-African coalition. However, most Pan-Africans, it's a hustle. I hate to say it, but on both sides. There's Pan-Africans in Africa who know that a lot of blacks in the diaspora want to kind of have a connection to Africa. And so what they do is they say, hey, brother, you can sponsor a village, but I'm going to take a percentage fee from showing you around, or I'm going to take a percentage fee from teaching you about the village so you can sponsor. So you're giving your hard-earned money to them just to educate you, and they care about the people. They care about their own people. And when I say their own, I mean black people. But at the end of the day, you're giving them certain money and so forth just to show them around, just for them to show you around and for you to sponsor a village and so forth, when they're not doing it for free, right? They're doing it as a business and so forth. Or they're saying, hey, you can sponsor my organization, you can sponsor my programs and different things that I'm doing for the people here, and just pay me. I've encountered all of this. There's Pan-African hustles. And the Pan-African hustle on the Black American side or British Black side is usually there'll be folks over there doing tours. There'll be folks over there, doing different initiatives where they say, oh, we'll help you with finding out more about your culture and so forth. But you got to pay us. And you got to pay us good, a lot more than you have to pay a regular tour company. So it's important to keep all of that stuff in mind. And this is problems within the Pan-African community because it's become like a hustle game in some cases. At the end of the day, like I said, I am Pan-African, and I believe that that's the genuine end game, and it has to be. Whether it's creating a country or whether it's having land allotted to us, so blacks in the diaspora can do their own thing, which I think is the best way to do it, or whether it's gaining automatic citizenship and being allotted certain rights for entrepreneurship. Because if we do not have any tangibles, it's more of an emotional thing. And that's where you go wrong when you make emotional decisions. For me, I'm going to get mine regardless of what, because I'm going to Kenya and Rwanda to do business, and they allow small business owners to still have equity. Okay? So we have to look at the Pan-African hustle. And that's something really, really significant, right? It's something that happens a lot, something that is unfortunate, but it occurs. The other thing that I think we don't acknowledge as far as problems in the Pan-African community is the burden is usually on people in the diaspora. The theme is, oh, Africans don't know much and you can't blame them. And we're in the information age, we're in the Google age, and guess what? I know all of the Africans who I know, friends and acquaintances, they all have access to the same media stuff that we have here. A lot of them know the same TV shows and movies that we know here. So keeping that in mind, it's important to know that if they wanted to learn the history, they can do that. History is a boring subject, though. Human beings don't really like to learn their own history, if you look at it. However, a lot of people practice their own history. You look at, Zionists, you look at Indians, you look at Chinese, they all practice their history in positive ways, influencing their culture in positive ways. And it's something that Black people need to do more as well. on all across the world. I'm talking about in Africa and in blacks in the diaspora. I've been to 15 countries, and this is a fact. So the burden seems to be on blacks in the diaspora, and it's very unfair, right? Because blacks are supposed to contribute, supposed to go back, and I think that's important to do, by the way. Go to Africa, even if it's just one time, preferably to a place, even if it is an emotional thing, that could be a good spiritual journey. And it's always good to get out of the matrix here. However, when you go there, don't put too much expectations in certain things, especially when you're not going to get any tangibles back, right? It's important to keep that in mind. So we're in an age where the burden is placed of the Pan-African on blacks in the diaspora, and I don't think that's fair. I think that how a lot of coalitions need to be developed in different African countries, where they can, and let's just talk about the sub-Saharan African countries. So we're talking about 45 countries, even though there's over 50 countries on the continent. I'm talking about sub-Saharan black countries. There needs to be more tangibles for blacks in the diaspora. So that's a big problem within the Pan-African community, because then they say, oh, contribute, do this, and you don't get anything back from it. Like for me, I'm going to get something back from it. I'm doing something good, developing vocational rehabilitation, career services that does not really exist in Eastern Africa. I'm doing something good, but I'm also making money from it as well too, right? So I love seeing people, brown, dark, black, light skin. It's a beautiful situation. But at the end of the day, I also still need to benefit from this situation as well, right? I believe in capitalism, compassionate capitalism. And it's something that a lot of Pan-Africans, especially Black Americans, when they go there, they live kind of like as bums in some cases. What I've seen is that they're broke noteps that walk around, that don't have a job, that don't work, and they're either living off of little money that they saved, or they plan on staying there, and then they usually have to go back, right? So there's no tangibles, and that's the problem. There needs to be specific tangibles for blacks in the diaspora. So that's something very important that I see that I don't think people acknowledge. There needs to be more accountability from African people to blacks in the diaspora. We all have to come together, acknowledge the flaws that exist, acknowledge the fact that there's things that we do wrong as Black Americans, and there's things that they do wrong as Black Africans. And we need to acknowledge the mistakes, the flaws. We've both been hurt. We've both been through traumatic situations, and how we can come together to unite as well too. All right. At the end of the day, I want to leave you guys with this. There is problems within the Pan-African community. However, I truly believe that if we create institutions, if we create lobbyists that can fight for us on the continent, if we create businesses on the continent, we can increase our influence to make sure that we can have more power there. And the reason why that's important, some people, some of my ADOS, brothers and sisters and stuff like that may say, oh, it doesn't even make sense to focus on there. Why don't we put all our energies here? I say, let's do both. Let's do both. I'm not one to tell you to go back to Africa, especially for emotional reasons. But I am one to encourage you to visit at all costs before you die. I am one to tell you to invest there at all costs if you can, if you have the resources and financial means. Come together with like-minded individuals. And at the end of the day, with so many different fractions, whether it's the Nation of Islam, Hebrew Israelites, Christians, Muslims, different Black folks, in the community, at the end of the day, we all want just a better situation for Black people all throughout the diaspora and the world. There has to be a source and a motherland to do that. And that's why I'm Pan-African. With all of the issues that exist and all of the problems within the Pan-African community, which I think we definitely need to address, Africa is still the motherland and still the source at all costs. With that being said, I would strongly urge people to get with like-minded individuals, try to work together, through your differences, try to work out through the differences. And I'm willing to do that. If someone sees what I'm saying is incorrect, maybe you can correct me, give me better information that's logical and rational with facts to back it up. And of course, I would support it. Let's come together as one. And don't forget, one love, one people. Peace.